Good evening and welcome to the 6th Annual Stanford Real Estate Hall of Fame. My name is Elizabeth Youngblood. I'm the Executive Director of Stanford Professionals in Real Estate. We promise to finish on time tonight, get you guys all back home. So we're going to keep it going at a clip, and I think that should please you. So I'm going to just talk a little bit briefly about Stanford Professionals in Real Estate, what we do, so that all of you tonight will, maybe who aren't members of Spire, may be interested in becoming members of Spire or recommending them to your friends. So Stanford Professionals in Real Estate is an alumni club of the university. We have 1,900 members spread across most of the states and 22 countries around the globe. We have 3 primary objectives: alumni networking and education, student outreach, and university curriculum development and university relations here at Stanford. Before I get into the student and faculty piece of the night, which is what we do when we're here at Stanford, I want to recognize a number of people in the room who are really special to Spire. We have actually 2 former Hall of Fame honorees. Malin Burnham, where are you? You raise your hand. There you go. And Fred Allen. Woo! We have 3 members of our Board of Governors here: Ron Sturzenegger, Doug Abbey, and Susan Meany, and Mark Kroll. Actually 4. Would you guys raise your hands? 3 of them in a row. I also want to thank our founding core sponsor, Alan Madkins, and our new corporate sponsor, New City Group. Now I want to move to the fun part of the evening. We have a number of students in the crowd. So you students, listen up. I would love it. I'm going to call you by degree program, and I would just like for you to stand so we'll know. How many students are here from the GSB, from the business school? Go ahead and stand up. Don't be shy. Thank you for coming. Super. And how many from the graduate engineering department, graduate program? And I think we even are joined by some intrepid undergraduates. Where are you guys? So I got to give my hats off to Jason Lopata. He's a senior majoring in history, but he has decided he's going to form a new real estate club on campus for undergraduates and graduates. It's going to be the first real locus of a networking group for students while they're here. So congratulations and thank you. So I want to kick off one of the reasons I took this job. I saw the opportunity that Spire had already begun to help foment a coherent real estate curriculum on campus, and by doing that, involving students in the world of real estate while they're here. A number of other schools do it well. Stanford could lead the world in the research and in the teaching of curriculum. So Spire does this in a number of ways, but the ones I want to highlight tonight, and they're also, we mentioned them in the book, but we give out grants to faculty for classes that are being taught. This year, there's one course on campus that focuses on housing in the United States. It's an urban studies course that involves both undergraduate students and graduate students. We've given them a course grant to do some things they wouldn't have been able to do without Spire's donation. We also are supporting, and where's Professor Levitt? I want to make sure. Oh, there he is. Good. We're also supporting a PhD student named Daniel Hall, who's researching how to better make construction projects far more efficient. And I'm going to have Ray talk a little bit more about that. I want you to enjoy your evening, and we'll get on to the festivities of welcoming Bob Burke and Sam Freshman into the Stanford Real Estate Hall of Fame. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So I get to speak on behalf of a student who's not here tonight, but who's been awarded the first scholarship that Spire has provided for graduate students. And I'd like to join Daniel Hall, who's a master's and PhD student in the Civil Engineering Sustainable Design and Construction program, of which a number of graduates are in the room, both recent and not so recent. And I'd like to thank Spire for the generous scholarship award to Danny that's going to help him extend his study of alternative contracting approaches to additional U.S. projects. You'll hear about his project in a moment. Danny's currently a visiting researcher at Imperial College, where they're doing some very interesting work on alternative project delivery of airports and other facilities. And he's asked me to accept the scholarship award on his behalf. And we asked him to prepare a short video so he could be virtually here, although he's probably asleep in London right now. But I'll ask the folks to roll the video, please.
Hello, I'm Daniel Hall. I'm a PhD student at Stanford University in the Sustainable Design and Construction program. I work with Dr. Ray Levitt and the Global Projects Center for my PhD research. I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to the Spire Board of Directors for this research scholarship. I'd love to be there in person to accept the scholarship, but currently I'm on a research project at Imperial College London and won't be back to Stanford until January. My research looks at how integration strategies in construction, such as BIM, co-location of stakeholders, or shared risk-reward contracts, allows project teams to collaborate and innovate on complex projects. During my time in industry, I was increasingly frustrated by fragmented decision-making and silo-based behavior. My research is important because it investigates the best ways for project teams to collaborate in order to produce innovations and create sustainable buildings at a low cost and within a given schedule. I've been gathering case study data in the Bay Area, but this research scholarship will allow me to expand my data set to projects in Los Angeles and San Diego. I look forward to continuing this work once I return to California in January. Once again, I want to extend my sincere thanks to Spire and the Board of Directors for this wonderful award and for your help in advancing quality research in the built environment. Thank you.
So Elizabeth said I might just give a little background on the program in which Daniel is pursuing his research, and I promise to keep it roughly to the length of a Super Bowl commercial. I'm probably going to exceed that by a little bit. But Danny's study of alternative contracting approaches is part of the portfolio of the Global Projects Center, which I direct, and it's a multi-departmental, multi-school initiative that's trying to create what we call a golden handshake between some of the largest pools of capital in the world and the developers of real assets like building and infrastructure through two primary thrusts. The first thrust is to try and enhance the capacity and the governance of long-term institutional investors like pensions, sovereigns, family offices, endowments, so that they can invest part of their $70 to $100 trillion of capital, which seems to be the consensus number that's controlled by these kinds of investors, into long-term physical assets like real estate and infrastructure concessions. And many of them are beginning to do this directly rather than through intermediaries, and we hope it's going to unlock a huge flow of capital into projects. But the other side of the golden handshake is getting the governance and the organization of the projects enhanced so that they are attractive vehicles for investment by these kinds of long-term investors. And there's some great examples around the world. We've been studying infrastructure concessions, both civil and social infrastructure. By social, I mean schools, hospitals, public buildings, and so on. And so going beyond individual buildings, last year under our new dean, Persis Drell, Stanford School of Engineering did a broad-ranging futures exercise involving a lot of faculty and alumni and others, and concluded that one of its top 10 priorities for research and education in the next decade or two will be how can we ensure that humanity flourishes in cities of the future. And so aligned with this high priority focus, our Civil and Environmental Engineering Department is leading a university-wide initiative that Elizabeth referred to, which we call Sustainable Urban Systems. And it's launching a series of research programs because being Stanford, we want to lead with research and then take the ideas from the research into cutting-edge master's programs and so on. But we're actually launching the first beta version of the master's program this coming September. We're currently advertising for students. But some of the research topics are related to urban quality of life, smart financing for smart cities, integrated infrastructure design and delivery, and just a word about that. Many kinds of infrastructure are migrating from large central facilities to small campus scale or even building scale, waste treatment, energy generation and storage and so on, to the point where there's no last mile of wire or pipe anymore. They don't have to be monopolies. They don't have to be regulated or provided by governments. So it's opening up huge market opportunities for private firms to deliver this smart next generation infrastructure. And Finally, digital cities, and some of you were at the summit we had in October, the Digital Cities Summit, which we extended an invitation to Spire members. And we had a tremendous summit talking about all the opportunities that are going to be created by the absolute torrent of information that's going to come from smart infrastructure, smart buildings, people's mobile phones, their transactions, the transit systems, the cards like Oyster cards in London or Clipper cards in the Bay Area. And we can imagine improving the services of transportation, water, waste treatment, power in a very integrated way in these future cities. And flowing out of that program, as I mentioned, we're launching this new MS program this fall as a separate track, we think, within our existing Sustainable Design and Construction master's degree in civil engineering, but involving faculty from around the campus. And we're reaching out to business, law, political science, economics, and others who would like to work with us, computer science as well. And the momentum for this thrust is beginning to build. We've actually launched a new Digital Cities Industry Affiliate Program within the Global Project Center, and the school has begun fundraising to launch this initiative. So we would welcome involvement from Spire members in any of these capacities as we go forward, and I'd be happy to stay around after the formal proceedings if anyone's interested to hear more about any of this. And at this point, I'd like to, again, thank everybody in Spire for the award that you gave Danny and Elizabeth for the chance to give this background, and enjoy the dinner, and congratulations to our two inductees tonight.
I wanted to take an opportunity. There are a number of people that I always want to thank when we're here, and we're going to, obviously, the stars of tonight are Bob and Sam and their families and their colleagues. But I want to take a little bit of a moment to recognize someone who's been instrumental to Spire. Chad Hagel from the class of 1998 founded Spire in 2009, and it's through his drive, his tenacity, his work effort, and his financial resources that Spire's grown into what it is today. And to him, I think we as a community owe him a debt of gratitude. And we wanted to take an opportunity tonight to recognize him, thank him for everything he's done. He has been the president of Spire for 7 years, and as of December 31st, he will be stepping back. So this is his last Hall of Fame event as president of Spire, and we wanted to take the chance tonight to say thank you. We have a special, it's going to be a surprise. Sorry, Chad, let the cat out of the bag. But Howard Wolf, who is Vice President of Alumni Affairs and the President of the Stanford Alumni Association, is going to say a few words about Chad. Howard, thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being here tonight. It's a special evening. When Chad Hagel approached me nearly 8 years ago, saying that he wanted to start a new club at Stanford, I was not thrilled. In the prior 6 months, our clubs had gone crazy. At the time, we had nearly 200 Stanford clubs and chapters all over the globe. And in the 6 months prior to Chad's call, our Hong Kong club went crazy because they were upset that there were more Harvard alumni in Asia than Stanford alumni, and that was our fault. The two clubs we had in France were at war with each other publicly, where two women literally got into fisticuffs at a Stanford event. And one of our clubs in Texas had elected a new president of the club, only to find out the next day after it was announced that he had spent 10 years in a federal penitentiary for meth dealing and was on parole. So I hope you can understand that when Chad came to me, I was anything but excited to have this conversation, but of course it's my job to respond to alumni requests, and I think that Chad knew that I was a former, that's a euphemism for washed up, real estate developer, and so I took the meeting. And Chad made his pitch, and it was elegant and eloquent and articulate, and he had a deck, and he went through everything, and then I spent 20 minutes telling him why this just would not work, and would not work at all. And I really tried to disabuse him of every notion that he had. And he shook his head, and I thought, my gosh, he's actually listening to me. And when I was done with my 20 minutes, Chad said, thank you very much, I appreciate that. Let me tell you all the reasons that you're wrong. And he absolutely destroyed every argument I had and said, trust me, this group, Spire, will be a huge success. And as we all now know, It has been. He was absolutely right. I was entirely wrong. And I'm so glad that he was right, because this has become not only the most amazing club chapter in the entire portfolio of 200 and some odd clubs and chapters that Stanford has around the globe. We believe, based on our records, that it is the most tremendously well-membered and active clubs in the history of Stanford University. So, I mean, you heard from Elizabeth earlier, and many of you are members. More than 1,900 members, 34 different cities represented, 22 different countries. The Real Estate Research Council, a way to connect with students with mentorship. 20 some odd events, 30 events in any given year of true size and importance. And you've even found a way to conscript faculty, the most difficult group cohort on campus, to engage in anything, into the life of real estate. So this has been an amazing, amazing success. And I knew how successful Spire was last February when I got together for our annual Ivy Plus Alumni Relations meeting, where I meet with the 8 leaders of the alumni associations from the Ivy League schools, plus MIT and Stanford. And as we're having drinks before dinner, 2 of them come up to me and say, "Hey, what's this Spire thing? A bunch of our alums want one too." That's the ultimate compliment, Chad. Now, of course, Chad didn't do this on his own. One of our honorees tonight, Sam Freshman, was the inaugural chair of the board and now chair emeritus. He served for 5 years, and he was at Chad's side for this entire endeavor. And of course, Andy Wahlberger, another Stanford alumnus, served for nearly 5 years as the executive director. But at its inception, in terms of its vision, in terms of those first years, this was all Chad Hagel. And I think we all should be very, very excited about what he has achieved. And as you heard from Elizabeth, this is his last time at a Real Estate Hall of Fame Awards dinner, where he will preside as the president of Spire. So I wanted to ask him to come up, and I'd just like to shake his hand and say something in terms of what he's done. So, on behalf of the university, 220,000 Stanford alumni living in 151 countries around the globe, on behalf of all alumni that are involved in the real estate industry writ large, on behalf of everyone who has ever been a member of Spire, has ever benefited from Spire, who has ever even heard of Spire, I want to thank you from the depths of my heart. Your vision was absolutely and stunningly superb. Your tenacity in making this all come into being was truly unparalleled. And the impact that you have had through this organization is truly immeasurable. We are very much so in your debt. Thank you so much. And congratulations.
Thank you, Ron. Congratulations so much. I think for the first time in my life, I'm at a loss for words. My heart is literally pounding out of my chest right now as I stand up here. I know the illustrious history of this university, and I'm so thankful to Howard for participating this evening and for his kind words. It was a complete surprise to me and truly an honor, because I know the list of luminaries that Howard has introduced, commended, thanked over the years on behalf of this institution, and for my name to even be uttered by Howard in that context is truly humbling and rewarding. I remember that meeting with Howard, and he definitely characterized it accurately. And no matter what he says he said to me, I know deep in his heart he was pulling for us the whole time. And for that reason, I really, truly thank Howard and his entire team for leadership, the confidence they instilled in us, and the support that they've provided us over the years, because without the help of the Stanford Alumni Association, our charter organization, we would not exist. We would not be here. I do want to take a few minutes this evening to talk about mentorship. And indeed, Howard has been one of my mentors. He is the perfect example of what it means to be a citizen of this university, somebody who has excelled in the professional realm and has come back to dedicate his hours, his hard work, and his toil to the university in a position that I don't envy. It's a tough position that Howard occupies as the president of the Alumni Association, because no matter what happens anywhere on this campus, good or bad, Howard has to answer to somebody for that, and that somebody is everybody. I want to thank my father, Mark, and his wife, Sharon, for being here this evening. They came all the way from Florida to share this evening with me, and I very much appreciate that. It means more than I can express. Those of you who have been to some of these events before have heard me start many stories with, "My father always told me," and now's your opportunity to actually ask him if all of those things are true. If you'll permit me, I want to share two stories about my upbringing that lead directly to me standing here and lead directly to this organization. The first is about real estate. I remember growing up as a little kid and being 5, 6 years old and driving around with my dad in his Cadillac when he'd go on site for construction meetings with general contractors, and I would be out there kicking nails around the pads of vacant buildings. And that stuck with me, that time that I spent with him on the job. And those of you that are sons of fathers and those of you that are fathers of sons, I encourage you to involve your children in everything that you do and give them an example of what it means to be a good man, what it means to be committed to your craft and what you do, because you never know where it will lead. And then my Stanford story with my dad was when I was a junior in high school. I was actually on my way to go to the Air Force Academy. I was a space nerd when I grew up, and I was going to go to Air Force Academy in Colorado, and I had the very first time I ever came to California was at a conference in San Diego. My dad said, "Well, why don't I come out there and I'll meet you when the conference is over. We'll drive up the coast of California. We'll have the whole PCH experience, and you get to see California firsthand." And halfway up, he says, "Well, why don't we stop at this Stanford place? We'll just check it out." 1 hour on this campus that summer, and I knew this was home. And this has been my home since that moment for the rest of my life. And I'm so thankful to my dad for taking what he characterizes as the most expensive vacation of his entire life. But I think he appreciates the investment in moments like this. There are several mentors of mine here in the audience tonight, and I'm so thankful to have them in my lives as well. Brad Geyer, who I call Coach, not just because he looks like John Gruden, but because he's really carried me through the retail development industry and given me a lot of examples and advice over the years. Malin Burnham, one of our Hall of Fame honorees of the past, who for me is a shining example of both civic responsibility and community commitment to the Stanford community and to his home community in San Diego. One of my great mentors who's not here tonight is someone that I've had the opportunity to meet through Spire, and that's Peter Bing. For those of you that don't know Peter, Peter is the Uber alum. Peter and his wife Helen have done so much for this university and have been so generous over the years. And when I asked Peter, if I want to walk in your shoes and be a citizen of this university, what should I do? And he thought about it for quite a long time and came back with a very thoughtful answer. And he said, "Chad, simply raise your hand and say you're here to help. And whenever they ask you to do something, the only answer is yes. Because every hour, every moment, every bit of effort that I have committed to this university has given back to me tenfold in everything that I've done." And I've found that to be true. And I want to continue in my path as a citizen of this university. And me stepping aside as the president of Spire gives me an opportunity to pursue other initiatives and endeavors and vision that I have here at the university to raise my hand and say, I'm here to help. I don't share all of these stories so much to give insight about myself, but to paint a picture for all of you. And the picture that I want to paint is how mentorship leads to achievement. I believe firmly that we are not the sum of what we accomplish, but we are the sum of what we inspire others to accomplish. So many times in real estate, we get focused on place. After all, the axiom of our entire industry is location, location, location. And while it's great to be in such amazing locations as Stanford, at the end of the day, this industry, and I believe life in general, is about relationships and community. That is what Spire really stands for at the end of the day. Spire is a platform for transferring knowledge, inspiration, and opportunity to other members of our community, the university community and the real estate community. I'm so grateful for the work of so many of you in this room and beyond who've helped build this platform into what it is. The commitment of the board of directors under the leadership of our new chairman, Lou Cohen, is going to carry us forward for many years to come. The backing and engagement of nearly 100 members of the SREC, many of whom are here this evening, and the financial support of our core sponsors, Alan Matkins and New City Group, will put us in a great place financially to know that our wheel is now rolling downhill and that this organization is going to be sustainable. And thank you also for the tireless efforts of our staff under Elizabeth's apt leadership and the direction that they're taking us as an organization. I'm grateful and humbled for receiving the praise granted to me this evening, but I'll be far more gratified when I sit in this room a decade from now and acknowledge the achievements of the next generation of Spire leaders. That, to me, is what Spire really stands for, and that's why I'm so happy to be here and to be just a part of this organization like the rest of you members in the audience. Thank you so much for the tribute this evening. Thank you so much for your well wishes, and thank you so much for being here to support our honorees this evening. So without further ado, we'll turn our attention to the real reason that we're here tonight, which is to honor Sam Freshman and Bob Burke, two of our greatest community builders and leaders. The first tribute this evening will be to Sam Freshman. Sam has been, throughout his career, the consummate networker and the consummate relationship builder. He's definitely amongst my most significant mentors and belongs on that list that I was sharing earlier. He took the risk on me and the risk on this organization by becoming our very first chairman of the board. Many of you have heard me say it before, but there would be no Spire without Sam Freshman. I hope you all enjoy this tribute to Sam.
I'm Samuel K. Freshman. I grew up in Michigan, lived in Huntington Woods, graduated from Royal Oak High School with a modest academic record. But in those days, it was not too hard to get into college. I was very fortunate. I wanted to go to California, and I discovered that the furthest away I could go from home was Palo Alto, California. And the line went right through Stanford University. I applied, and fortunately, by the time I was ready to graduate from law school, my father had bought a business in Pasadena, California, and he said, go into real estate, that's where all the money's made in California. So I took his advice, and the rest is history, I guess.
Sam was always interested in entrepreneurial opportunities, and I was always full of entrepreneurial opportunities, but I just didn't have any money. I remember in one case we looked at the Malibu Theater deal, and I think what happened there is he liked maybe the deal, but I don't think I passed the ARDIT test. So he passed on that deal, and that deal was incredibly successful and lucrative, and of course He lived in Malibu at the time, so every weekend he would come to the movie theater and see how successful it was. So the next time around, we had an opportunity in Hawaii. And in order to make that happen, I had to have lunch with Sam and Ardith along with my mother. They wanted to see, you know, what the whole family scene was like. So we had that lunch at Sam's Country Club in Malibu at the time. And the lunch lasted a couple hours, and I guess I passed the test because Sam put in a couple $1,000,000 as a result of my mother attending the lunch with me. So I thank my mom and I thank Sam for that, and I think Ardith was the final say on it. And then that transaction turned out to be a huge winner. He got back 5 times his money in less than 2.5 years. So that really started a long-term successful relationship with Sam and Ardith.
I think he saw the future in real estate, because even if times are bad, if you own real estate, you still have something to look at. It isn't a piece of paper. So I think he understood that.
I've done other things as well, but it's always had something to do with real estate. And by 1983, my side business of investing in real estate was doing much better than law practice. But in 1 year, about 1981 or 82, I put together a deal where I made more money than I made in the 20-some odd years of practicing law, and I said, that's it. Even though I like the law, I can't afford it anymore. And I went full-time over to Standard Management, which is a company I started probably around 1962, and had other people running it until about 83, when I went full-time into that.
I met Sam in 1986 when I went to work for him. He chose to hire me as controller. It was an incredible opportunity for me because Sam was a teacher, he is still a teacher, and he also provided us with an amazing amount of opportunity to advance rapidly through his organization. I started out as controller. Within a couple of years I was CFO, and a couple of years after that they made me vice president of finance, which was very exciting for me. And then in the 8 years that I worked for him, everything I knew about real estate I learned from him.
Sam said something I think his father told him, it may have even been his grandfather, once to me that I never forgot. He said, Stender, if you don't want to read about it tomorrow in the newspaper, don't do it. And I think that's very typical of Sam in the way he approaches not only his business, but all of his personal relationships. He's a man with a great deal of integrity.
We had invested in lots of apartment houses, and we decided to invest in some hotels. And we found out very quickly that we didn't know anything about the hotel business, and we decided to sell and get out. And I wanted to take the loss in that year to offset some other gains. And Sam said, don't worry about it, I'll buy you out so you can take your loss right now. So 6 months went by, and I heard from Sam, and he said, well, we closed the deal, and we had the good fortune of selling the liquor license separate from the hotel, so I've got a check for you. The next day, when I opened the mail, there was a check for $160,000. I don't think there are a lot of syndicators that I've met in my lifetime who would have treated that particular deal that generous way. They would have said, hey, I did you a favor, you got out, you didn't stick around for the bad, so when the good happens, you're out of luck. Not Sam.
The numbers on the deal either work or they don't, and you have to be careful not to fall in love with the project. I made that mistake once or twice and held on too long. I also found that although I've done some development, that at least for me, it's often easier to buy an existing project than to build one, and cheaper. I've owned property in about 15 states and maybe 27 metropolitan areas, but I probably should have just stuck closer to home. I would have done a lot better than jumping all around the country.
Well, one of Sam's admirable characteristics is his strive for youth, and staying young, and he attributes a lot of that to the office and to working. And he works to stay young, he says. At the same time, he'll tell you that he's never worked a day in his life.
Sam is the ultimate networker. He will walk into any room with a stack of business cards this high, and he'll walk out with a stack of business cards this high. But he'll walk in with his business cards and he'll walk out with everyone else's. And I've seen Sam repeat that masterful networking performance over and over again in every room that he walks into.
The other fundamental piece too is how important mentoring has been in his life, and taking the time to give lectures or write books and really give back to an industry that has been so important to him and made him so successful is a wonderful thing to see.
In 1971, I wrote a book about real estate syndication that became quite popular. I think it sold over 50,000 copies, and it's still selling.
And we've all seen his book, the red book, him with the pile of money, and while, maybe a little sort of honed and exaggerated as book art cover, but captures the truth, we all know that there's so much more to Sam than just about that pile of money. It's about the people and about learning along the way, too.
The thing I'm most proud of is that Chad Hagel came to me about 6 or 7 years ago, he and his friends, and they were forming this Real Estate Alumni Association. And they wanted somebody, I guess, older, and asked if I would go on the board.
When we met Sam, when we engaged with him, when we learned of his position in the alumni community, his position in the business community, his legacy, he literally wrote the book on real estate syndication. We realized that he's not just a businessman, but he's an educator, and he believes in helping people grow professionally and helping people to excel in their profession. So it's very, very fitting that as Sam is stepping down as the chairman of the board of Spire, that the organization that he helped found and the platform that he helped found in the Stanford Real Estate Hall of Fame is honoring him and honoring his legacy, both to Stanford and to Spire.
Well, I think the main thing, which was the thing that my parents taught me, that the most important thing is family.
When we met, I was teaching school, and Sam had just graduated from Stanford Law School and came down to Beverly Hills. And my aunt gave him my phone number. He called me.
We were engaged in 10 days. And we did decide we'd have a 7-month engagement to make sure we really were doing the right thing. And we've been married 57 years.
Soon after that, we had 4 daughters, 7 years between the oldest and youngest. And we always did everything together as a family.
Well, one of the great things was that he always would spend the time on Sundays to be with us. Even if he was really, really busy, even if he had a giant case, he'd always spend time to be with us on Sunday.
One of the fond memories that I have with my dad is going horseback riding with him when I was a little girl, and with the entire family as well. He developed the Malibu Riding and Tennis Club because when he was young, he had said he had great times as a camp counselor. So he wanted us to have that experience, and we would go every weekend and ride together as a family.
Some of my fondest memories of my dad are when we'd play board games together, specifically Monopoly and Stocks and Bonds. I think those were his 2 favorite games, and quite frankly, the only games that we played. I mean, how cool is that, to be able to play Monopoly with a real estate professional? These are really great, fun bonding times where we were able to enjoy each other and play a game. And Dad was also able to teach us about real estate and investments through this play.
My father's very inspirational. He's been a mentor to a lot of people. He put together a book of quotes called The Principles for Success for Love and Work. He's also shown us that hard work really pays off because he built his own business. He's done so many things helping other people build their businesses. A lot of people would work for him for a number of years, and he really wanted them to go off on their own and encourage them to start their own companies or their own businesses and be successful.
He really has a unique vision in this regard, and I believe that the investment community recognizes him for this.
He's a legend in the real estate business. He's been enormously successful. He's completed a ton of transactions, and he's mentored a lot of people. It's not just me. And I think he takes a lot of pride in all the people that he has mentored, and that he's kicked out of the nest over the years.
He is a wonderful man. He's a family man, a great business person, and truly a mentor to a lot of people.
But I think he really has been wonderful, and I think he was everything that I had hoped that he would be.
He will never buy something that's priced too high, and he will never sell at the wrong time.
Don't make the two mistakes I've made. I didn't buy enough and I sold too soon.
Well, as you can see, Sam, there's only one Sam. He's the greatest. And I just want to say to Sam and Arta, thank you. And I met Sam when I was recruited to come to this sort of startup group. And Sam was the chairman. Chad, obviously, was our president. And it's the greatest group, as you can tell. This is the greatest group we've ever served on the board with. So I served with Sam every year. We always had Chad. And for the last 5 years, we had Andy Wahlberger, who you've seen and heard about. And the three of them had totally complementary skill sets. And together, it was all about getting Spire to the next step. And as you can see, from a startup to now, in only 5 or 6 years, and even when, not only even, but when Howard says what he said about this group, as contributors to Stanford in lots of other ways, we are so proud of Sam. And I have only a couple real remarks here. I had like 31 pages, so I'll cut it down to 28. But basically, in Los Angeles, his four beautiful daughters and his beautiful wife made this presentation. So I'm a pale substitute for them. But you saw his daughters on the video. And that family was raised with lots of humor, sense of humor, and they told all the more stories about being equestrians. I found out the other day, for the first time when I was talking to Sam, that he was a jumper. You saw him. He jumped horses for 43 years, from age 40 to 73. And I asked him now, why did you give it up? He says, I was tired of paying my orthopedist that much money. I have one, we all know what Sam has done for Stanford, and Stanford undergrad, he was I'll give two little bits here. One, he was the advertising manager for the Stanford Daily, and he broke the record in raising money for the newspaper. He was the head of the Axe Society. He was all kinds of other things. Then he went to law school and also was a super overachiever. But I have to tell my Senator Dianne Feinstein story. So it turns out Senator Feinstein and Sam were contemporaries. So Sam ran to become the head of the Stanford Democratic Club here on campus, and he thought he had a chance to win until Dianne defeated him soundly. And that was the end of Sam's political career. Dianne did quite well. And Sam may or may not have changed parties on that day. It's true. So, anyway, I do now want to kind of, without further ado, I want to, Sam, I want to thank you for all you've done for Stanford University and for the creation and leadership of Spire. And now, without further ado, it is my honor and pleasure to congratulate Sam Freshman on his well-deserved induction into the Stanford Real Estate Hall of Fame.
Thank you, Fred. I'd love to meet that guy you were talking about. I want to thank my wife, Ardith. If you'd stand up, please. And the other members of my family who you saw in the video for all the support and encouragement they have given me throughout my career, particularly with regard to my responsibilities as Spire chairman over the last 5 years. I also wanted to thank Stanford University and Stanford Law School for providing me with 6 years of a wonderful education experience, which has created many great memories. My sincere thanks also go to Howard Wolf and Judy Heller and the Alumni Association for their support, the many members of Spire, the Spire Board of Directors and staff who have enabled Spire to reach its goal of approximately 2,000 members, the SREC, the Stanford Real Estate Council, is only 2 members short of its goal of 100 members. These are the people that actually pay the bills. I don't know if people know about the Real Estate Council, but every member of the Real Estate Council, the regular members, pays in $6,000 a year and receives nothing other than our thanks. We do have a nice conference, but we charge them another $6 for that. None of this could have happened without the help of many people, including the members and friends of Spire. And most of you don't know about the members of Friends of Spire, but people think that only Stanford graduates can form membership in Spire. But membership in the Friends of Spire is open to anyone, even if they went to Harvard. And I think it's only $99 a year. You can go to spirestanford.org, or if Chad Hagel is still here, he might give you your first year's membership free. Chad's still here, I'm sure. Right. All of you that I have forgotten to mention, and all of you that I have mentioned, I would please ask you to stand. That is all the members of the board of governors, members who are here, and all of the other members of Spire. If you just stand up for a moment so that you can be recognized for what... Please. You are responsible for what we are here for today. Together, we overcame early skepticism about what could be accomplished. Frankly, when Chad came to me and asked me to accept this position, I was as skeptical as Howard was. But as Howard explained, you can't turn down Chad Hagel. Spire is now playing a major role in real estate education at Stanford, in architecture, engineering, financial studies, development, and law. It was my honor to be able to have offered guidance, strategy, and mentorship along the way. I myself have been fortunate to have mentors when I was at Stanford and throughout my career. I credit them with my success. I'm often asked how to become rich in real estate. My answer is, I made a lot of mistakes, tried to do them only once, and have lived a long time. My advice is, make a lot of mistakes, learn from them, and live a long time. I'm still learning every day. When there are challenges, we have a tendency to blame others or circumstances. But I have found that quite often, the problem is because of something I have done myself. So I look at myself rather than others for both the cause and the solution. In many cases, My successes were a result of being lucky, of being in the right place at the right time. And I often say, because people have been talking recently about our success in Reno, that it's much better to be lucky than smart. But to be smart is to prepare for all possible scenarios. Luck is often simply a matter of preparation. And our company's mantra is, from our friend Murphy, I think all of you have heard Murphy tell you, what can go wrong wrong will. We always at Stanford add that Murphy was an optimist. I've had the opportunity to play many different roles in my professional life. Here's what I have observed from some of my business and personal experiences. As a board chairman, I learned start board meetings on time and keep them focused. Prepare an agenda and stick to it. If the discussion strays, defer the issue to a committee. And Lou has learned very well. He's picked it all up in a few months, and I have no worries about the future. As a borrower, I learned shop for competitive bids for loans, just as you do for any other product. It's the banker, not the bank, that determines the outcome. As a lender, I learned be cautious about anyone who offers you more than the current market rate. As a business partner, I learned you need to have strong compatibility with your business partner. You and your partner need to share in the decision making. As a networker, I learned always carry business cards. As a public speaker, I learned give the audience what they came to hear, not what you came to sell. As a college professor and lecturer, I learned you learn more from the students than they do from you. As a competitive horseback rider, I learned sometimes the horse knows better than you. As a husband, father, and grandfather, I learned always be available for your family, be sensitive to their needs, and look for opportunities for quality time together. As a overnight camp counselor, I learned keep your campers busy learning and most importantly, having fun. And as a student, I learned never stop learning. For the students here in the audience tonight, I have a bit of advice. When I was at Stanford, I learned as much outside of class as I learned in class. Be active, involved, and never stop learning. Have the courage to ask for what you want. You will be surprised how often you get it. Treat everyone honestly and fairly. Set reasonable goals, and when you reach them, raise the bar higher. I want to again give special thanks to Chad and his friends for a wonderful experience as chairman of Spire. I intend to continue my support and involvement as chairman emeritus, as my plans are to never retire and to continue my professional and business activity as long as I am able. Thank you very much.
It's our opportunity now to recognize the great Bob Burke. Bob is the consummate educator. And I've told this story in Los Angeles, but if you hang with me till the end, there'll be a bit of a twist to the way the story ends. I had the opportunity to be one of the many individuals who was a student of Bob over the years. About 5 years ago, I approached Bob along with my former business partner, Damon Dunn. At that time, we had been developers for several years, and we were looking to raise an equity fund to bring in private equity capital for our business. And Bob very skillfully articulated for us the difference that day between entrepreneurial achievement and institutional pedigree. And that was Bob's way of, in a very nice and calm way, saying, no fund is ever going to give you fellas a dime. But as you heard here tonight, I'm a little tenacious at times, and my partner Damon and I went out there on the street, we hit the pavement, we knocked on doors, we didn't give up. We asked every single person we could find for an opportunity to raise private equity. And you know what? After all that work, Bob was right. We didn't raise a dime. But the twist at the end of this story is something I want to highlight, which is the role of Spire and the Stanford network in general. Because since that moment, which was 5 or 6 years ago, roughly around the time that Spire was really getting off the ground, Spire has grown into what it is. And what I can say is that as the president of Spire, I've had a truly unique exposure and opportunity that's been presented. And I know that many of our other members are starting to have these same stories now, which is that for me, I can say honestly today, there is no aspect of my entire business, there's no deal that I'm doing today that doesn't have some connection to Spire. And that to me represents the power of the network. So you may not always get what you're looking for, but if you keep working really hard, you'll find success somewhere. And I think that's really a tribute to Bob and goes very well with the story of his life and his career. Please enjoy this tribute to Bob Burke.
So when you first meet Bob, he looks like a button-down lord, but I can assure you I've never laughed as hard as I have with Bob over 32 years of being a partner and a friend.
When you first meet him, he's extremely serious, and you would think this fellow is not going to smile anytime soon. But when you get to know him, not only do you find this is a warm, kind person, but you also discover this incredible sense of humor.
He's a great explainer. He has the patience to understand when he talks to someone where they are and to meet them there and work through whatever the issue is.
I was a little afraid of him when I first met him. It was early in my career. I was a young landscape architect. Didn't really know what I was doing. Had never really encountered someone as whip smart as he was. But by the end of our work together, I just developed such an enormous reservoir of respect for him.
So I'm Bob Burke.
So as best as I know, Bob grew up in Coos Bay, Oregon. I think his father was a small businessman, and I think his mother was a teacher.
Growing up in a small town does have a lasting impact. You know, they say you can take a boy out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the boy.
I think he was the high school quarterback of the year in Oregon. Came to Stanford, was a football player actually, among other things, joined the fraternity.
So I have very fond memories of my undergraduate years, more so than my law school years, which followed after that.
So if you look at Bob's career, it's a number of 10-year segments, and it's because Bob gets impatient with things, and he's really great at starting up businesses. He likes businesses that change a lot, but when a business stabilizes, Bob slowly starts losing interest in it and moves on to do something else, which is entrepreneurial and exciting.
Bob is a serial enthusiast. He loves to jump into things and learn everything about them. And, you know, he generates ideas constantly.
And if you really look at his career, starting out as a poverty lawyer in Latin America right after law school, to being a lawyer in San Francisco with Morrison Foerster, to leaving Morrison Foerster for a shopping center development company as an in-house counsel, and then coming back to Morrison Foerster only to move to Washington and start their office in Washington, and then coming back and running the firm, but then joining what became AMB, and then running AMB as an advisory firm, and then a fund management firm, and then taking it public. Each one of these things are really a, 7 to 10 year interval of time.
Why Bob was so successful is people trusted him. Bob used to say, and the real estate business is full of people who are promoters and self-interested, and Bob used to say, we're real estate professionals, and our job is to put our clients' interests ahead of our own.
So Doug and Hamid are fond of kidding me about the fact that I don't know anything about real estate, which is remarkably true in certain respects. And I've concluded that one thing I'm good at is selecting partners to do the kind of work that they do.
But we shouldn't stop there, because after A&B went public and shortly after that, Bob retired from the day-to-day management of the company. He started another very successful business with Metropolitan and sold that business recently. And we've now invited them to come back to Prologis, the old A&B, to help us with our venture investing business in technology relating to real estate operations. So again, he's back in working with young people and doing something very different and very interesting.
I have enjoyed being managed by Bob over time, and I've learned a lot about being a manager. One of the first things he said to me when I started working with him, and he says this to everybody at Metropolitan until you get it, he says, I don't want to hear what they told you. I want to hear what you think. And you hear that from Bob and you're like, me? You want to hear what I think? And what it does is it completely inspires you to do your homework because you want to give him a good answer, and over time to really be a good critical thinker.
Bob has a real skill of mentoring our young up-and-coming leaders, and he enjoys that, and people really enjoy working with Bob, and they look up to him as their mentor, and he plays that role very effectively.
Over time, he becomes the go-to person for many people in his life. So even though he says he's slowing down on business all the time, he has so many people coming to him.
One of the things about Bob is he tries to retire and he fails repeatedly.
And I didn't have a real job for 2.5 years. And that seemed fine initially. I thought I would go out and do a lot of volunteer work and take advantage of the fact that I'm kind of a Renaissance man with a lot of interests. And then I went out and joined some volunteer organizations, and they all took one look at me and said, we want you to work on our real estate committee or our real estate projects. So I came to the depressing conclusion that I'm really not a Renaissance man, I'm really a real estate guy. And I ended up doing a lot of real estate related work in my volunteer life, which I continue to do to this day.
The 92 to 2000 timeframe, when I was at Stanford Management Company working closely with Bob Burke, one of the main projects that we worked on was this $500 million series of projects around Sand Hill Road, right next to the university and the Stanford Shopping Center, and what is now called Stanford West Apartments and the V. He was always available. He had a full-time job. He was one of the principals and founders of A&B, which was a thriving public company, a REIT, and very serious business, but he was always available to help and listen and counsel.
So that work's been very gratifying at Stanford, but when I was on the board of trustees, I was chairman for 7 years of what's called the Land and Buildings Committee. So once again, they turned to me and said, you're a real estate guy, so you do this. In 1996, I was asked by two prominent business people in San Francisco if I would volunteer to serve as the lead negotiator on behalf of UCSF to try to find a potential campus for UCSF in San Francisco, which they had outgrown their Parnassus campus. And the city was at risk of losing UCSF.
He was able to get Catalyst Corporation to give 44 acres of land pro bono. So that immediately enabled UCSF to dream big.
So that was very gratifying, and I've sometimes joked that it's the most successful real estate transaction I ever negotiated, but unfortunately I didn't get paid for it. Kathy and I and our family moved into the Presidio in 2002. And then in 2005, I was invited to join the board of what's called the Presidio Trust, which was responsible for essentially redeveloping the Presidio as a national park, but also residences and also several million square feet of commercial property.
And when I first met Bob, let's just say I had a pretty simple stereotype in mind about what a developer meant, and what they were about. And I think for many of us who came to work here, we were really inspired by the national park values of the Presidio. And he really opened my eyes to the power of private sector approaches to transforming public assets and really shaped my thinking. Not only was Bob committed to a public vision for our work, he put his money where his mouth was. And he and his family made a very generous gift to the Trails campaign that resulted in an unbelievable overlook, the National Cemetery Overlook, which is set up above the National Cemetery in the Presidio. It has played a really important role in transforming the Presidio.
You can have a career and work hard at it and do it well and be proud of it, but you can then take whatever benefits that bestows on you and find time in your life to also go out and do volunteer work. Today, and really for many years, I have segmented my life into three what I sort of think of as portfolios. I guess that's because I'm an investor at heart. So there's my family, which is more important than either my career or my volunteer work. And my wife and I have been married for 25 years, so I value that enormously, and I know I'll value it even more so in the years ahead.
When we got married, we knew that we would have children. Bob had already had children, so I had 2 stepchildren right away. But he was willing to do it again, and I think he imagined he was going to have a little daughter, and that would be that. But in fact, I called him at my 3-month appointment in my first pregnancy, and we discovered that we were having twins. And they, of course, turned out to be two boys. We had another boy 6 years later, but he's an exceptional father because he's really willing to sit and listen.
I don't try to dominate my children. They're quite different than I am, and each is finding his own way. So I assume they will not end up doing the things that I did, and that's just perfectly fine. And I try to explain to them how one navigates a career, and I can't explain it because hopefully I've made it clear that much of my career happened partly through planning and partly by accident or just good luck. I've had a lot of good luck. I've co-founded 3 companies, and in each case I've had partners who were as capable or more capable than me, and we worked together to accomplish the things we accomplished. And I would never try to do it any other way. I wouldn't trust myself to go out and do it single-handedly. And I think young people today ought to think long and hard about that. If they can find a friend with whom they're compatible and who has complementary skills, not the same skills as them, but complementary skills, that's the best way to put together a winning team.
I'm Curtis Feeney, and I am honored to be here at Spire this evening and have a chance to introduce my dear friend Bob Burke, who I worked with at Stanford Management Company and at the Presidio Trust. Bob did, as I was sitting at his table, lean over and whisper to me, "Man, I wish I had that Howard Wolf introducing me." and you're about to really wish you had Howard Wolf introducing you. But Bob has touched the lives of everyone in this room in a very positive way. And I know this because Bob also leaned over to me and said, "I have touched the lives of everyone in this room in a very positive way." I knew you were going to regret this, Bob. So I do think that Bob is a soft-spoken person who chooses his words carefully and uses brevity as a scalpel. So it's quite possible that any introduction of Bob Burke to an audience will exceed in length his rebuttal. But I'll try to avoid that. He is, as we've heard, a kid that grew up in Oregon, took his football skills to Stanford, got his undergrad and law degree there, then became the managing partner of Morrison Foerster, one of the largest law firms on the West Coast, went on to found two multi-billion-dollar enterprises, basically A&B, which became Prologis' largest industrial property owner in the world, and Metropolitan Realty, which is another very large and successful operation, and several other operations. And while doing that, he also was involved as a trustee at Stanford University, working on UCSF, as you heard, a director of the Stanford Management Company, and on the board of the Presidio Trust, among other things. He is not shy about digging in and working. And he is deeply loved by all, and not that he just told me that also, but his lovely wife, Kathy, and great children who love him dearly. His partners, Doug, Abby, and Hamid Moghnim. Apparently, Hamid didn't love you enough to be here, but also greatly love him. And you ask yourself, he's like a god. He's golden. He's got the golden touch. How does he do it? And it's personal characteristics. He's wise. He's funny. He's kind. People go out of their way to seek his advice and have him be their mentor, and he offers it up. He serves the purpose. And he's humbled to the point of aggressively rejecting all honors. He actually finds this sort of thing awkward. I'm trying to help in that regard. And he does not like the attention, but like so many things, when he's called on, he answers. He is a self-described conflict avoider, and even so, he has been involved in some of the biggest conflicts that I've been around. When the Presidio Trust was trying to do the Fisher Museum, it was really controversial. There were I remember coming out of a meeting, there were hundreds of people protesting, basically Bob, but I was there. And then Bob was asked to, literally, by the trustees, to jump in and negotiate for both sides this Fisher Museum, and both sides were delighted that he did it, and he agreed to do it, and he didn't want to do it, believe me. And the same thing on the Sand Hill Road projects, which were talked about in the video. So the other victim here, Bob, is that unfortunately I had a long flight across the country this week, and I was thinking about what to say, so I loaded up some ammo. The only sort of, maybe I'll give a preamble. You've seen the movie Bruce Almighty, and Morgan Freeman played God, but no surprise that wasn't their first choice. So I call this little-known facts. Once in a while, a person comes along who never seems to do anything wrong. Just how exactly does that even work? Well, the answer we find in Robert T. Burke. Advice he gives with nary a pause, wrapped in a bow like he was Santa Claus. When Miley Cyrus dance moves were jerking, it was Bob who said, "Have you thought of twerking?" And even though God was played by Morgan, no surprise they first asked the kid from Oregon. As a conflict avoider, he's certainly no chump. When asked, he says, "I like both Hillary and Trump." This man is loved by Doug, Kathy, and Hamid. When you cut his skin liquid gold, he does bleed. Sure, Bob's sage and wise, but just for your info, if he's so smart, how come I'm doing the damn intro? And for the rest of us, what about us, we sob? Well, like everyone here, we just want to be Bob. Bob, congratulations.
Well, Christine, now we've seen the problem of having Curtis on an airplane in business class getting all those free drinks. I'm amazed at how many people turned out on a Friday night for this event, and Sam and I are flattered, but we understand this is not about us. It's really about support for Spire, which has become the tremendous organization that was described tonight. I want to thank the Spire for this honor. It's been a pleasure working with the Spire staff and the people who put this event together. And of course, I want to thank my wife, Kathy, and my children for their support. Kathy and my sons, John and Tim, are here tonight. I also want to express my gratitude for my co-founders at AMB, now Prologis. They were Hamid Moghadam and Doug Abbey, who are, Doug Abbey is here tonight. Hamid is off with Jamie Dimon. I mean, why would he choose Jamie Dimon over me? I don't get that. At IHP Capital, my co-founders were Doug Neff and Don Grant, along with Hamid and Doug Abbey. And at Metropolitan, they were David Sherman and also David Nassau, who's at my table tonight. Without them, the companies I've been involved in would simply not have succeeded. Between the written materials you received and the video you've seen, you've already learned more about me than you ever wanted to know. In the brief time that I have, I'd like to address my comments to the younger people here tonight and to talk about striking a balance between professional objectives and other priorities in your lives. As a young person, I was quite idealistic and dreamed of careers that somehow changed the world. I fell short in that regard and learned early on of my responsibilities to support myself and my family required me to find work in an environment in which I could be reasonably successful. So I found myself practicing real estate law and eventually moving into real estate investment. Throughout the first 20-plus years of my career, I was able to find some time for civic engagement as a volunteer with nonprofits, but mostly I was focused on establishing myself professionally. After AMB became a public company, I continued to work, but I had the opportunity, really the luxury, to donate a greater portion of my time to volunteer and philanthropic work. I found this very gratifying intellectually and professionally. It brought rewards beyond financial rewards, and it permitted me to express some of the idealistic urges of my younger days. It gave balance and diversity to my activities, which I have appreciated greatly. My point is that the choice to diligently pursue a career need not be a choice to abandon one's other interests. There is room in our lives to be active in more than one realm. You do not have to commit to a one-dimensional existence, and you need to find time to enjoy yourselves with family, friends, and recreation. Indeed, I'm happy to say that some of the most interesting people I know are also very successful in their careers. We all know successful people who are driven and one-dimensional, but that doesn't have to be you. I'd like to tell you that in my volunteer life, I've had a wide array of amazing experiences unrelated to real estate. However, I have consistently been asked to help out in real estate-related ways, as the video noted. In the interest of time, I'm going to cut short some of the details, most of which were covered in the video itself. I do want to particularly note that for all the Stanford people here, there is one table right over here of people who are not from Stanford, they're from UCSF. They are some of the most distinguished people literally in the world of global health. And if there were a Hall of Fame for global health, that table would be at the center of it. And we're really honored to have them here tonight. UCSF has been very kind and helpful to me and my wife. I'm not quite sure why they're here tonight, but you know, they don't have a football team and there is a game tomorrow, and it's possible that they're staying down to watch that game. The activities that were described in the video were hard work, but they were extremely satisfying and challenging and fun. They were as successful and as important as anything I did in my private sector work. I see many accomplished real estate professionals here tonight who I know have also contributed important time and effort to successful civic activities. And I want to acknowledge them for all that they have done. For those of you who are still getting started, I wish you great success in your professional and volunteer lives. I hope that your efforts will greatly benefit our communities. You will be glad you did it. Thank you and good night.
Just yet. All right. Humble to the last moment. Exactly. This time you get to take it home. Great. Thanks, Bob. Thank you. What a night. As we conclude the evening, just a couple of other small orders of business. One is, I'll point out here this chair, and after the end of the ceremony tonight, we'll invite Sam and Bob to come up and take a couple of photographs. Sam's chair is down in LA. We left it there after the LA event rather than having him haul it back up here at Stanford. But every member of the Stanford Real Estate Hall of Fame receives one of these hand-carved chairs. That the story behind the chair is about 5 years ago, we took the first ever SREC excursion abroad and went to China. And we visited the Stanford Institute at Peking University. And within the Stanford Institute at Peking, there's all of this amazing woodcrafting there. And after the trip, we reached out and found the individual who runs the woodcrafting shop where these are made. And every year he fabricates these chairs for us. So we're very grateful to have that resource available and to be able to present these chairs every year. It's really a beautiful tribute. The other thing I'd like to do is to now invite someone else to join me here on stage, Dave Butler. Dave has been a member of the board of Spire since that board was formed. He's been one of the architects of the SREC and has meant so much to this organization. And I'm very proud that Dave is going to be succeeding me as president of Spire January 1st of 2017. So I wish Dave the best of luck, and I think he deserves a round of applause for stepping in to take on this role. And finally, before Sam exits the building, as he mentioned to us earlier on in the evening, Sam is known as the consummate networker. And as I said in the video, Sam never walks into a room without his business cards. And I did this in LA as a surprise, and I didn't get in too much trouble for it. So I'm going to do it here again tonight. And that is that in true Sam Freshman fashion, if you look at your tables, you'll find a stack of my business cards. They say O/A on the back of them. And as Sam plugged in his speech this evening, there is a group called Friends of Spire, which is open to anyone, regardless of your alumni status of the university. And so my invitation and my offer to every one of you is that if you, in the next 7 days, email me, I will pay for your first year of dues to join Stanford Professionals in Real Estate as a Friends of Spire member. So with that, I thank you very much for your time this evening and your attention. I again acknowledge Bob and Sam, and I wish you all a wonderful evening. Good night.